Imagine if you have a child, your child is born, and say, what are you going to name him? Con man. You know, I'm going to name someone who's basically a thief. So you don't give your child the name thief when they're born. You usually don't do that. But Jacob, that's his name. And he steals his brother's birthright with the help of his mother. But yet, he is the one whose name is changed to Israel. The name that will basically be the patriarch of the 12 tribes of Israel. And what's peculiar biblically about Jacob is that usually when there is a name change in the Bible, the name changes and they never go back. The interesting thing about Jacob, and what's powerful in the Hebraic tradition, is that Jacob's name, when he becomes Israel, it goes back to Jacob, sometimes Israel, Jacob. And I really think that's a paradigm for humanity. Israel is the promise, but we act like Jacob a whole lot of times. Then we have a bifurcation, a duality of spirit, that we're sometimes Jacob and sometimes Israel. Sometimes on Sunday we want to be Israel. Then on Monday we're Jacob. You know, we turn these things around on so many levels. And so here you have biblically again the duality of the human experience. But we want to sanitize it. Here's another example. A gentleman by the name of Moses. Moses is a convicted murderer, but yet he will be the liberator of Israel. And now we have a convicted murderer. Now we love to lift up Moses, but he's a convicted murderer. But yet he is the one that is chosen by God after he started his pension program to go before God, to go before Pharaoh and say, let my people go. So now you have this whole issue about those who are in the sunset of their years, but at the same time, someone who's committed a crime early on, but God still says, I can use you. Again, painting a human picture. Or one of my favorite biblical characters, David. David has major issues. I mean, if you just look at his life, we love to look, oh, he took out a giant. Well, let's look at it here. David was standing on the balcony one day, saw this beautiful woman, and then decided that he was going to sleep with her. But in order to sleep with her, he also had to kill her husband, who worked for him. This is a major soap opera, better than anything that you can find on TV. But yet, it is framing the human experience. And so today you have a generation that raises a question with the church. Why is it I can see the human experience out there? Hear it from artists, hear it from poets. I can see it in people who paint. But yet within the church we want to sanitize who we are. How come we can't deal with the contradiction of humanity and at the same time deal with the mystery of God? That God is willing to use broken vessels. 21st century faith demands that we are honest about who we are. And in the global south where it is going, there is a tendency, a proclivity to always deal with the collectiveness, the duality of humanity. So this experience, this beauty, and dealing with the contradiction of humanity becomes so very important. And the other powerful thing that I wanted to mention here is that the church is not the building, but there is a different framework that we need to look at in terms of the church. There's someone by the name of Brian McLaren, who's a writer and a theologian in the U.S. And he tells a story about how he came to understand that he is missional. He grew up as an evangelical, and he thought he was the only person on the planet who was right. That's the way evangelicals in the U.S. that I'm just right, everybody else is wrong. Well, he had an experience where he was taken to church with a gentleman who was Pentecostal. And he found out that in the midst of the Pentecostal worship service, he felt the Spirit of God on him. He said, you know what, I've been talking that I'm evangelical, which in the U.S. simply just means that Jesus died for my sins, is the way that McLaren says it. And then he says, I realize that I'm Pentecostal too. And he said, all Pentecostal means is simply this, that the Spirit of God is not just an activity of history, but something that operates now. And I realized that the Spirit of God operates in the now. Then he went on to a worship service with somebody who was Catholic. And then he began to understand the Catholic social ethic. And then he saw the crucifixion of Christ in a very different way. It was the teaching of the idea that Christ suffers with us. So he started out as an evangelical, found out that he was Pentecostal, then he realized he was Catholic too. He realized he was Catholic because he says, you know what Christ does? Christ suffers with us. And I have a concern for those who are suffering. So then he continues on, he goes to worship later on in his life with someone who's very liberal, who sees Jesus as a wisdom teacher, who's really struggling with the whole enlightenment idea. They're trying to fix, this idea of empirical and rational together, and they're really struggling with this. But he realized, yes, Jesus is a master teacher. Master teacher. He would be working he'd be working on so many levels to educate people. So he says, I realize I have a liberal tendency here too. Then he got connected with someone in South America and learned about liberation theology. And realized, wait a minute, Jesus is on the side of the poor. So I now realize I'm evangelical. I recognize that I'm Pentecostal. I'm Catholic too. And then I realize that I'm liberal and I'm liberationist all in one. But this was the one that really just hit him upside the head and just really messed him up on so many levels. Is that he went to worship with an Eastern Orthodox Christian, a person who was from the Ethiopian Orthodox Church. And he said that they had a completely different theology. It is Pope John Paul II who says that Christianity has two lungs, an Eastern and a Western lung, but we've been breathing primarily with only one lung, that being the Western lung. And he says that something happened in this experience. He said that the Orthodox tradition views the world very differently. And he explained it this way. He says that God comes into the world, teaches humanity the divine dance. And it was through, as a result of our disobedience, that we decided that we were going to do our own dance steps. And then Jesus comes into the world to reteach us the dance steps. And this is what he said that was very interesting. He said, out of that Orthodox tradition, he says, our role is to dance the divine dance. Our evangelism is based on our dancing. That if we dance so beautifully, if we live a particular life, if we engage the world a certain way, people will want to become a part of the dance. But if they choose not to, we keep on dancing and we end up blessing the world in the process. So whether you join the dance or do not join the dance, it is the role, at least in Orthodox, that we keep on dancing because the life that we live is incarnational. That is love and justice and hope and forgiveness and grace, all of those things that we are called to live out as a community. That will then cause people to inquire. But even if they don't inquire and don't come into the church, what do? We continue doing the same thing because what we do, the dance, we end up blessing the community in the process. And I love the way that McLaren says that. And so when we decide to dance, when we decide to have this experience, when we decide to bring beauty into the world, then we can reclaim the city. Reclaim the city. That's one of our callings, is to reclaim the city, because humanity is searching for meaning. That's what Viktor Frankl talks about. Man's search for meaning. We're constantly searching for meaning. And here is this model of Jesus who is going from town to town, infecting people with this contagion of love. And people then go on and talk to other people. That is evangelism, when you're living a particular way. It's not giving someone a tract and say, come to church. It's about living out a particular life and recognizing that as you live out that life, you're still not perfect. And within the city, there are issues that should be primary for the church. I believe this. Issues of poverty, issues of homelessness, all these issues of pain and suffering. The church should be the one that is lifting up these issues. And the church has language politicians don't know anything about. When was the last time that a politician stood up on a platform of love and forgiveness? When was the last time that one in power used the words of grace and hope as their foundation? That's the language of the church. Reclaiming that language, and we can reclaim the city in the process. When you reclaim the language of love and of justice and of hope and of grace, that's what's happening. And so when you see young people filling up, whether it is a restaurant or a club or going to a particular concert. I remember last night we walked by the theater and there were all of these people packed in to go see the Avengers. I wanted to go that night. I had jet lag, couldn't go. But I was really fascinated by this group of people. And I said, you know what? One of the reasons that they're there, of course, they want to see the movie. But the other thing is the community experience. It's one thing to watch a movie by yourself, but to watch it in community. Well, why do I go to the club? Because I want to be in community. Why do I go to the coffee shop? I want to be in community. I want to find some connection. And the church can reclaim the city when she reclaims her language again and is unashamed about the language. That we speak about love, we speak about hope, we speak about forgiveness. That's what we talk about. And we are incarnational, meaning that we are attempting in so many levels to live and operate in a certain way as a community. Not because we are perfect. No, not in any way because we are claiming perfection. But we are claiming a call, and we're claiming the power of God. When you go to churches in the South, whether in the United States, whether in Africa, whether in South America, there is a deep belief in the power of God. You know, north, I know it happens in Chicago too. People want to argue, that happened in history. But they want to have a nice intellectual argument about whether or not we should do this. But in the South, there's a deep, abiding belief in the power of prayer. There's a deep, abiding belief in the power of community, in the power of words to change people's lives.